Ambassador Zelithvar adjusted her crystalline throat sacs nervously as she entered the Galactic Council's War Memorial Chamber. The holographic displays flickered with names of the fallen, billions upon billions of souls lost during what historians now call the Terran decimation. Even 50 cycles later, the mere mention of that conflict caused veteran council members to fall silent. She approached the central memorial, where a single human skull sat encased in transparent aluminum. Below it, etched in 17 different galactic languages, were the words, "Never again." Terrifying, isn't it? Zelithvar spun around to find Admiral Korexthan, his scaled hide bearing the distinctive scarring that marked him as a decimation survivor. His three eyes focused on the memorial with something approaching reverence. "Admiral," she acknowledged with a respectful bow, "I was reviewing the historical records for my species' first contact protocols. The humans, they seem so primitive." "How did they— primitive?" Korexthan's laugh was a harsh, grating sound. "Child, you speak of humanity as if they were simple beasts. That was our first mistake." The old warrior moved closer to the memorial, his claws clicking against the polished floor. "When we first encountered them, they had barely mastered faster-than-light travel. Their ships were crude, their weapons laughably outdated. We thought them an easy target for absorption into the hegemony." Zelithvar consulted her datapad. "The records show they refused integration 17 times. 17 times we offered them the gift of civilization." Korexthan nodded grimly. 17 times they spat in our faces." The council grew impatient. The ambassador watched as the admiral's scarred hands trembled slightly. Even decades later, the memories haunted him. "We had conquered 400 species," he continued. "Some resisted briefly, a few planetary cycles at most. But humans were different. When we finally decided to take their worlds by force, we expected to crush them within a standard rotation." The holographic displays around them shifted, showing tactical readouts from the war's opening days. Blue markers representing hegemony forces vastly outnumbered the scattered red dots of human resistance. "The first battle was at their colony of New Geneva," Korexthan said, his voice dropping to a whisper. "We brought 3 full armadas against a single human defense fleet. They had 60 ships. We had 6,000. What happened?" "They won." Zelithvar's translator struggled with the admiral's words, certain it had malfunctioned. "I'm sorry, did you say—" "They won," he repeated, louder this time. 60 human ships destroyed 3 of our armadas. Not defeated, destroyed. We lost over 4 million personnel in 6 hours. The young ambassador stared at the memorial skull, trying to comprehend such a devastating loss ratio. "How?" Korexthan's 3 eyes met hers. "Because we had never encountered a species that refused to surrender. When their ships were crippled, they rammed them into ours. When their shields failed, they detonated their reactors rather than be captured. When their ammunition ran out, they used their ships as projectiles." He gestured to the tactical displays, which now showed the aftermath of countless battles. Every engagement followed the same pattern. Humans took casualties that would have broken any rational species' will to fight. But they didn't break. They adapted. "The records mention something called Geneva Conventions," Zelithvar said, scrolling through her data. "Some sort of warfare limitation treaty?" The admiral's laugh was bitter. "We thought those conventions proved their weakness, rules limiting how they could wage war against their own kind. We were fools. Those conventions weren't signs of weakness. They were chains humanity had placed on itself because they knew what they were capable of." The memorial chamber grew darker as Korexthan approached the skull. "When we captured their first prisoners, we expected them to provide intelligence in exchange for better treatment. Standard procedure. Instead, they gave us only their name and a numerical designation. Nothing else, even under interrogation, especially under interrogation." His voice carried the weight of old guilt. "We tried everything. Neural probes, genetic manipulation, temporal displacement, torture. They either died fighting the process or went catatonic. Not one gave us useful intelligence." Zelithvar felt her throat sacs constrict. "How long did the war last?" "Officially? 12 cycles. In reality, it never ended. Even after we glassed Earth itself, scattered human fleets continued attacking our supply lines. They had no home to return to, no central command, no hope of victory. But they kept fighting." The admiral touched the transparent case holding the skull. "This belongs to a human child. found on the bridge of a ship that rammed one of our dreadnoughts. The humans had armed their young rather than let them live under our rule. That's... Salithvar struggled for words. That's horrific. Yes, Corex then agreed. And it's when we realized we weren't fighting a species seeking victory. We were fighting a species choosing extinction over surrender. Every ship they lost made them more dangerous, not less. Desperation didn't break them. It refined them into something that made even our battle-hardened veterans wake screaming. The tactical displays now showed the war's final phase. Scattered red dots appearing behind. Hegemony lines striking at logistics hubs, civilian transports, and command stations. They learned to strike not just at our military, but at our will to fight. They targeted our non-combatants with a precision that was almost artistic in its cruelty. Not from malice, but because they understood that we valued those lives more than they valued their own. Corexithin's scarred hide seemed to dim. The Council sued for peace after they infiltrated our core worlds. Not because we couldn't win, we could have glassed every human stronghold eventually, but because we realized that even in victory, humanity would have made us into something we couldn't recognize. They were changing us, making us as brutal as themselves just to survive the conflict. And now their worlds are quarantined. Their hyperspace beacons are dead. We tell ourselves they're extinct. He turned to face her, all three eyes reflecting the memorial's cold light. But sometimes in the deep void between systems, our long-range sensors detect something moving. Something that shouldn't exist. Zelithvar felt a chill run through her nervous system. You think some survived? Admiral Corexthin was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of absolute certainty. Ambassador, we didn't just fight humanity. We fought the very concept of surrender itself. And concepts are very hard to kill. As they left the memorial chamber, Salithvar noticed that the Admiral still checked the shadows.